Friends and viewers, Robert Louis Stevenson, a well-known writer, he is well-known for his Treasure Island, and the other well-known novella which I'm going to discuss now is, the name of this novella is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyl and Mr. Hyde. This fiction is published in 1886, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyl and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson is a novella published in 1880s that deals with the duality of nature, human nature, the duality of human nature. The story is told from the point of view of Mr. Gabriel John Utterson. Utterson is a lawyer and a friend of Dr. Jekyl's. The book opens with Utterson walking with and conversing with Mr. Enfield, who is a businessman and a distant cousin. Mr. Enfield recounts to Mr. Utterson how he once saw a man named Hyde, who had run over a girl, come out of a door they are passing with a check signed by Dr. Jekyl's. The check was for almost £100. Utterson notes that the door in question leads to a laboratory that connects to his friend Jekyl's house. Utterson returns home after his walk with Mr. Enfield and goes straight to his study, where he has a copy of Dr. Jekyl's will. The will stipulates that should Jekyll disappear or perish, Edward Hyde will inherit his estate, certain that there is something wrong, that Dr. Jekyll must have been in some way tricked or coerced. Utterson visits his friend to inquire about his beneficiary. Dr. Jekyll not only assures Mr. Utterson that his will is correct and he intends to pass on everything to Hyde, but he also refuses to talk about his connection to Hyde, which vexes Mr. Utterson. About a year passes and a maid witnesses a crime. While looking out of her window, she sees a man attack another elderly man, killing him with a club. She recognizes the murderer. It is Edward Hyde. His victim was a man named Sir Danvers Carew, a respected gentleman and one of Mr. Utterson's legal client. Following the gruesome murder, Utterson goes with the police inspector to look for Hyde, who reportedly lives in Soho, then a seedy area of London. However, they can't find Edward Hyde. With Hyde missing and suspected of murder, Mr. Utterson worries for Dr. Jekyl's safety. He goes to his friend and asks again after his connection to Edward Hyde. Once more, Dr. Jekyll will not go into detail but promise that he won't have dealing with Hyde anymore. He shows Mr. Utterson a letter from Edward Hyde promising that he won't hurt Dr. Jekyll. Mollified, Mr. Utterson lets the murder matter drop. For a while, everything seems as it should be. Dr. Jekyll hosts parties and works with charities, and there is no more mention of Edward Hyde. Then a close friend of Jekyl's and Utterson's suddenly falls ill. His name is Dr. Lanyon. Mr. Utterson pays him a visit, but Lanyon flatly refuses to discuss anything related to Dr. Jekyll. Instead, he hands Mr. Utterson a letter with instruction that it not be opened until after he has died. Dr. Lanyon dies a week after he gives Mr. Utterson the letter. Mr. Utterson can read the letter. He and Mr. Enfield witness a shocking event. While out on another walk, they come across Dr. Jekyll's home. He talks with them out his window, but then he transforms, which shocks them both. It's not until Mr. Utterson, goes into Jekyll's laboratory after hearing Hyde's voice that he confirms the truth. Inside, he finds Edward Hyde dead on the floor wearing Dr. Jekyll's clothes. He finds a letter on the body from Dr. Jekyll. Mr. Utterson reads Dr. Lanyon's letter first. Lanyon explained that Dr. Jekyll had been having difficulties with side effect of a drug he was working on, and that he had asked for Lanyon's help in procuring some hard to come by ingredients of it. Lanyon described how Dr. Jekyll transformed into Edward Hyde and how that transformation shocked him into his sickness and ultimate death. Mr. Utterson continued to read Dr. Jekyll's letter, discovered that drug he was working on was meant to test whether or not a man had dual nature, good and evil. With the drug, he could separate out his evil side. Embodied by Edward Hyde, unfortunately, the more Dr. Jekyll worked with the drug, the less predictable it was, so that he could no longer control when he turned into Edward Hyde or what Hyde would do when in control. He knew that if Hyde won, he'd cease to be Dr. Jekyll and all of his goodness would be gone. So he wrote the letter and took his own life. Literature during the Victorian era often sought to determine what makes human nature what it is. Madness, one's own capacity for good versus evil, and playing God often move their way into written works of time. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde examined all three of those themes and was so well received that the story has become part of popular culture and the modern. So this is the story, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. So, friends, I was intending to tell you the theme of this story. What is the theme behind this story, this novella? This theme consists upon the split nature of man. Jekyll declares in his confession in chapter 10, I thus drew steadily nearer to that truth by whose partial discovery I have been doomed to such a dreadful shipwreck that man is not truly one but truly two. Man is constantly aware of conflicts within himself, of being pulled in different directions by his desire. From an early age, Jekyll feels the pull between good and evil, the latter of which he describes a certain impatient gaiety of disposition, which makes him seek illicit pleasure. Jekyll seeks to heal this division, to separate out the bad part, so that man will no longer be tormented by the conflict between good and evil. This desire comes from a good impulse in Jekyll. However, there is already evil in his soul, which means that part of him longs to taste evil in the guise of another person and live a sinful life with impunity. Therefore, in trying to separate evil from good, he proves that it can't be done, at least not without severe consequences. Jekyll was a split and divided man even before he took the potion, thus showing that good and evil are both present indissolubly in man's soul. So this is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a classic novella. I hope you will enjoy. Kindly don't forget to subscribe my channel. Thank you.